Hello, Orion Ghia here. This particular episode of AARGH My Optics is well long, so we've cut it into more digestible chunks. You can find the previous part right behind this in our uploads, unless you've already listened to it. In that case, welcome back. Let's get back into it, shall we? My optics! So, is there anything else you want to talk about the show before we move on to talking about the toys?
I really liked the music in the American version of the show. It's one of those type of... it was very common in that era of anime / westernized cartoons where they would have some sort of... They would obviously have the theme song, but they also have another song that's like a song for the battle or a hype song type of thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, they're the same in the Japanese version, only they're vastly superior.
I mean, I do like those songs. It's just that I didn't grow up with those songs, so...
Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether it's the same... Actually, I do know. I did look this up. It is similar in the US version in that they overuse the same pieces of music over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the music we play when they're having a battle.
Yeah.
Here's the music we play. And I don't like the reworked version of Transformers Robots in Disguise. I think it's awful. Where it goes, Transformers! I don't like that at all.
Really?
No.
Wow. I love that song. Yes,
it's just a bad remake of the G1 tune.
No, I can't. I can't even compromise it in my head. It's just it's a good hype song. Like I just like how excited and rage for battle it all gets when the song plays. I can't separate it.
Yeah, but it is essentially the G1 theme tune remixed.
It is. Yeah.
And in my opinion, not a very good way. But that's your mileage may vary. The Japanese tunes are all right as well, but I mean, again, it's fine. It's fine.
The Japanese one is very well. The opening is very upbeat.
There's two. It changes halfway through.
Oh yeah.
They've got a really annoying piece of music that they play when the kids are doing stuff in the Japanese one, which keeps going whoop, whoop, and it's quite annoying. I mean, the music is perfectly serviceable.
I think what it is because it's something fun for like young children. This is what it was really targeted for, and I can't separate that from my head. Like, it was just great at the time.
Yeah, it's just nostalgia, isn't it? And I absolutely agree that the TV show and the toys. So here is an actual bit of synergy that actually did work. They were aimed at the same demographic, quite clearly, and that was kids. So the TV show was a Saturday morning kids cartoon, basically, or whenever it was. I don't know when it was broadcast in the UK.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. And then the toys were very much aimed at people, kids from, I don't know, 6 to kind of 12 or something, I would have thought. Something like that. And then the toys kind of reflected that. My optics! With that all out of the way, we should talk about the toys themselves, the toy line. What did you think of the toy line at the time, and how do you feel about it now?
Well, I liked it at the time. I thought they were great figures. At the time, I didn't know the difference, but looking at it now, it was a great little bundle for your money. Because a deluxe was £10, and the packs of 3 were about 6, 7.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of standard across Transformers lines at the time. I mean, the same was true of a Beast Wars Deluxe was £10, like...
Yeah, but I mean, so you got the character, you got a minicon, you got the comic, you got the sticker. They all came on these really massive card backs, bubbles or whatnot.
Yeah, I guess I see what you mean. Though it was kind of I suppose there was some value for money to be had.
Because I mean, in fairness, you got from before you had RID, and then you just had the deluxe and maybe his accessory. Like there wasn't anything else in the box for the same price, so they definitely tried to entice people
Yeah.
with what you were getting.
I'd agree with that. They were very snazzy boxes. They were kind of curved at the front, and they had that kind of plastic blister over the top. A really big window, and you could see most of the toy and the mini-con and everything you were going to get. And the toys were, a bit bigger and chunkier. Admittedly, as a result, they were a bit less articulated or intricate or clever as stuff that had come in the previous couple of lines. You know, toy engineering had moved on quite a bit between G1 and Armada, in that the Beast Wars toys were quite highly articulated by the end of it all, and RID was very much still continuing that trend, you know. It was a Japanese-only line originally, and then we just got ported over to the West, just as a filler, really. Because they decided they weren't going to do Transtech. Which, I mean, is a great shame, really. I would have loved to have seen Transtech, but I can understand, because Beast Machines was a bit of a shit show.
Yeah.
Not a shit show. It wasn't a shit show, but the toy line was a bit of a shit show.
Yes. So
I can understand why they kind of backed out of that. Yeah, like I said before, I remember them being on the shelves, and I remember thinking some of them were all right, but they're deliberately designed for children, which is exactly what they should be. They shouldn't really be attractive to me as an adult anyway. That's not what they're for. It's not like these days. Back then, it was like, these are kids' toys for kids. So they were packed full of gimmicks, packed full of action features, play patterns, and ways you could use them together and combine them, and all that kind of stuff. So as toys, looking back on it, even though at the time I thought they looked a bit crap, as toys, they're actually really great. Really well designed for their purpose, which is to be something for a kid to play about with, chuck about. They were quite sturdy.
They were very sturdy. I'm looking back at my own figures on the lead up to this. It was like, these figures still are hold up, and I have no problem transforming them and whatnot. Like, towards, I'm sure whenever we do talk about Energon, we'll talk about that. Like, a lot of my figures were broken compared to the Armada ones, and I think that a lot of that came down to the different type of materials they used. Because obviously,
I think it came down to the Energon toys being much nicer toys. I think they were going back the other way. They were moving back towards toys for slightly older kids.
Yeah, probably because they wanted to carry on the fans they had instead of getting new ones. Yeah,
exactly. So the kids who were 6 to 8 or whatever when they were buying Armada were now 10 to 11, 12 or whatever when they were buying Energon and so on. So I think that change might have had something to do with that.
I see.
But, I mean, it's just me guessing. But what I find interesting about the toy line is that I didn't know at the time, but not until I kind of got into reading Transformers forums and talking to other fans and learning about it from the perspective of Hasbro and AARGH, who we'll talk about a bit, but he was the lead designer at the time at Hasbro. It was the first toy line that Hasbro and Takara co-developed. Previously, one or the other would take the lead in developing the toy line and then all the media that goes with it and all that kind of stuff. But this was the first time they worked together in unison. Not that they were always completely in unison, but, you know, they tried to, and it was a more unified toy line. And it actually, you know, despite what I might think about it being a bit kidsy and kind of, in a way, a step backwards in toy design, for me, it was hugely popular and was quite good for it. It was another example of the line coming back from the dead, as it were, because like you had with Beast Wars, when it all kind of tailed off in Beast Machines, you know, things weren't looking great. That's why they brought Robots in Disguise over, just to keep the line on the shelves. So Armada was the kind of the second rebirth of Transformers. I think you mentioned this. You said something about one of the things you wanted to talk about was the redesigns of the characters, and I assume what you mean by that is like just generally the designs, because some of the designs are definitely meant to be reminiscent of G1 or past versions of those characters, and some aren't. Some are just kind of new.
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, so like Prime and Megatron are clear examples of massive redesigns of like how people envision a Prime and a Megatron. Like maybe Optimus less so, but Megatron's very different.
Yeah. Although he does have little nods.
I mean, he's a green tank, so yeah. I mean,
and he has the cannon under his arm.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is a nod to G1 Megatron.
I know that he has like a little knife in his hand, and that was meant to be like a callback to the sword he has as a G1 toy.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, it could be. I mean, Optimus is very much just another Optimus in a lot of ways. He's a truck with a trailer. He has the same kind of face with the mouth plate. He has a grill on his chest. He doesn't have windows, although I understand there was at one point they wanted him to have windows on the front, but due to the toy design, they had to kind of like move them onto the back of it. So there was an intention for it to be a little bit more G1 looking. So he was very much more a kind of like a more of an evolution of the Prime design. Whereas, yeah, Megatron was considerably different. I really like Megatron's design. I like those massive tank tread shoulder pauldrons and the insect pincers for horns and like and his underarm cannon, like I said before, that's very reminiscent of the G1 Megatron toy. Because in the TV show they had the barrel of the gun up behind his head, which is actually a mistransformation. The correct transformation for the Megatron toy is to have it coming out at his waist.
Oh,
it is kind of a nod to that in a way. Having that cannon coming out underneath. I mean, you could have it on his back. You could swing it round. It's part of his kind of super mode or power link ability or whatever that he'd have that cup swing out and shoot. But it is a very cool design. And I like Starscream's design because it's quite a departure from G1 Starscream. He's different colours for a start.
Yeah. He's got his canopy on his chest.
He has, yeah. I mean, yeah, there are definitely nods. He's got a kind of similar head sculpt-ish. But that whole kind of having one of his wings turn into a sword was cool.
I really like that.
I like that. And that's not something you would have, that's a completely new idea. I mean, it's the thing that I really like about the Unicorn Trilogy is that they took a chance and they just thought, well, let's just do something new. Let's not over-rely on previous iterations. Do something new for the kids of 2002. I guess that's because up until then, that's what they had done. Like, they did G1 until no one was buying it anymore. And then they went, let's do something completely different. And they did Beast Machines. And then, Beast Wars. And then Beast Machines. And then they went, let's do something completely different again. And you had RID, which was like a kind of mishmash of the Beast era aesthetic and a kind of more G1-like aesthetic, although still quite different and quite Japanese inspired. But yeah, I do like that they did something different. I mean, obviously to varying degrees. Not all of them are brilliant.
You're not a fan of Hotshot, are you?
Hotshot just looks like he's got a crash helmet on.
He
has. It's deliberate. I read that it's a deliberate. He's meant to look like a racing driver. That's why he's got the
straps,
the straps across his chest, and his helmet looks like a crash helmet because it's supposed to look like a crash helmet. But I think he looks a bit dumb. He's not very. Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing particularly heroic or cool about him. He turns into a very boring-looking car.
I mean, it's yellow.
It's just like it's just like some nondescript, average-looking car.
I mean, that's all. Actually, that's a good point. All of them are kind of weirdly exaggerated cars. They're not like I think the Minicons transform into things that are more
realistic,
Earth modey, realistic than what they transform into.
Yeah, I'd say you're probably right. Yeah,
there's a lot more boxes and things attached to them, or
the alt modes for almost everybody are kind of like very unusual. They're not going for any kind of realism.
No.
Which I suppose isn't too unusual. I guess it is if you're thinking of it as following RID. But if you're thinking of it as kind of following on from the end of G1, alt modes have gone a bit crazy at the end of G1 anyway, so...
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of more like that. They're more like the Headmasters type of vehicles. They're just... They are cars, but they're not a car in the real world, per se. They're more like a...
Yeah. And then you've got some very strange things like, I mean, what even is Demolisher?
A tank of some description.
Sort of tank. And then Cyclonus is a helicopter with arms hanging off.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I quite liked the way the Sideways worked. I liked that he had a Minicon riding him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Riding the motorcycle. I like the fact that they did different designs, and I like the fact that they were aimed at kids and they were meant to be kind of played with, which is nice. And you had like lots of gimmicks.
Yeah, no, I think toy wise, I think it all was pretty cool. I mean, it's not 100% one for one to the show, but a lot of the designs really follow through in the toys, or vice versa, like the way they transform, the where their kibble sits or whatever. Or
it's quite accurate.
Even the way where the minicons attach on to activate the gimmicks is how the toys work. So it was very unified in that way.
Yeah, I think that works really well. The toy line, the synergy between the toy line and the TV show works. I think where it's not where it falls apart, but what I do find interesting is some of the kind of baffling reuses of names and like inappropriate designs for those names. The Japanese didn't get it right either. Like the US line and the Japanese line have the same issues but with different characters. Like they'll use a really odd name for that particular design. Mm-hmm. I mean, on the US side, you've got Smokescreen, and he turns into a truck with a grappling hook, or sort of like a hook. Mm-hmm. Also, just an aside, when he gets introduced in the TV show, he chases the kids around and tries to murder them, and then goes, "Oh, just kidding."
Yeah.
Not sure why. Kind of let him off that a bit.
They do that for the first few introductions of characters. They just stay in their vehicle mode until right at the end, and they're like, "Which side are they on? Why are they doing this?" And
yeah,
I loved how Scavenger had like a long cloak on for like the first few episodes of his introduction.
They never explain why that was going on. Like it's just he was like stood on top of a mountain with a cloak on.
He was so tall
for no reason at all. Then he just joined the Decepticons. Then he defected. But why is he doing this hanging around looking mysterious business? But yeah, to go back to what I was saying though, like so you've got Smokescreen, which does I don't know why. I mean, apparently what I've learned looking it up was they weren't originally planning to call him Smokescreen, but they might have used a different name. I'm not sure what. But they were having trouble getting trademarks passed. And at the time, Alternator's Smokescreen was in the pipeline. Mm-hmm. So they already had that name available. So they just took it and gave it to him because they needed to give him a name.
Okay.
But it doesn't really suit the design or character. Like, what has that character got to do with the name Smokescreen? Because normally the names of characters kind of have some parallel to what they are, you know? And also, if you think about back to what G1 Smokescreen looked like, this is completely not in any way similar.
It's very different, isn't it? I was trying to think of another one. Wheeljack, maybe? But that's fine.
Yeah.
No? Yeah.
Well, Wheeljack I was going to say, apparently Wheeljack, when Takara designed Wheeljack, they designed him to resemble Sideswipe. G1 Sideswipe.
Okay, yeah.
But then, for some bizarre reason, Hasbro named the toy that they designed to look like Nightbeat. They named him Sideswipe, so they ended up calling the one that looks like Sideswipe Wheeljack. But in Japan, they called the Wheeljack one Rampage.
Okay.
Which, you know, is a bit of a weird name for someone who used to be an Autobot. And then it's mad, really. So then the one that they designed to look more like Nightbeat, who does look a little bit like Nightbeat, G1 Nightbeat. He then ended up being called Sideswipe, and his Minicon got called Nightbeat. They were just slapping names on left, right, and centre. They weren't really paying an awful lot of attention. Aaron Archer posted a lot of stuff online at the time, basically suggesting that his team weren't on top of everything as much as they could have been, and they were kind of winging it. I suppose it's a bit like when Beast Wars was in production. It was like, well, Hasbro, please do something and make it good so that we can keep this line going. So they kind of weren't so kind of on the ball with kind of keeping control of what they were doing. Wasn't
there like also some sort of departure with the Japanese show and then their names and stuff? I saw something about Aaron not realizing that they were going to change so many of the names of the characters, or even not call them Minicons or anything. Like there was a big, like, oh, they've changed it. Oh, it doesn't matter now. It's too late.
Yeah, almost. Not everyone, but almost everyone in the Japanese show and the Japanese toy line has a different name, or a slight. Though they have a similar name, but a slightly similar name, but not always. But there are also some crazy names in the Japanese version, like Sideways is called Double Face, which is a little bit on the nose. And who else makes no sense? There's a few. Blur is called Silverbolt, which I don't suppose is that bad because he is a silver racing car, so it's fine. And you've got Hot Rod instead of Hot Shot. Obviously, Prime is always Convoy. Megatron's Megatron. I think Scavenger's called Devastor instead of Scavenger. But it's fine. But there are some weird ones.
What's Tidal Wave called?
Shockwave.
Okay, that's fine, I guess.
I don't know how Tidal Wave speaks in the US show, but in the Japanese show, he can basically say nothing but his own name.
Kind of. He doesn't talk a lot. In Energon, he does that, and he just basically just says his name a lot. I don't know if he does that in Armada.
Dave is correct. Tidal Wave barely spoke in Armada, but when he did, it was simply evil laughter or the very brief G1 Dinobot-like referring to himself in the third person. In Legends of Micron, Shockwave only really says shock, wave, or strong arm, which refers to his title as Strong Arm Admiral, whatever that means. However, when Tidal Wave returns in Transformers Energon, he adopts a similar verbal tick by chanting Tidal Wave, Tidal Wave, Tidal Wave, over and over. In the Japanese version, he just keeps going, Shock! Wave!
Yes.
There's one other word he says as well, but like very rarely, occasionally he does say something other than that, but very, very rarely. The Japanese line also had more show-accurate colour schemes on the toys as well.
Yes, yeah.
And they also had a lot more Minicons. They had loads and loads of different colour variations of the Minicons, like exclusive ones and like extra sets. They brought out tons of them. If you love the Minicons, you could really make a massive collection of them if you went and got all the Japanese exclusives, because there's loads of them.
Yeah, I saw a picture of the Sparkplug, who looks like Bumblebee. That's attached with Prime. I saw like a picture of like.
He's called Prime in the Japanese show.
Oh, that doesn't make it more confusing, does it? There's like 20 of them, or 30, all these different colours. I'm like, wow. Like, I knew there was a few variations over here, but I didn't realise it was that many. Like,
yeah,
every colour under the sun.
Yeah, there were loads. There were like loads. You'd love it. There's loads of translucent ones.
Oh, great! Yeah, I would love a translucent Nikon.
Yeah, they did loads of translucent ones, and they did a translucent. Well, let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. Unicron. Mm-hmm. So, what do you think of the Unicron toy?
I didn't get it at the time. I got it a few years later, but I thought he was great. I mean, at the time, he was big. Mm-hmm. He was a big, chunky, heavy toy.
Yes,
like that Unicron could do some damage if someone hit you with it in the playground or something.
Yeah.
And I thought the features were cool. The light up features, the mouth eating gimmick, the maw, the missiles, all of it. It was a very compact playset, really, I guess.
Yeah.
You could put all the Minicons on him. It was...
He had little holes in his arms and his chest for Minicons to sit inside as well.
Yeah. Articulated fingers. Pretty cool.
Yes, he did have articulated fingers. That's quite... I mean, I think the Unicron toy was the point at which I actually went, oh, hang on, something interesting is happening in Armada. And I did buy that toy in Toys R Us.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 50 quid.
Something like that, yeah.
And I even got the Energon repaint later.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it was a great toy. I really liked it. It had, again, yeah, like you say, loads of interesting gimmicks. But it still was quite... Unlike a lot of other Armada toys, I suppose because it was so large, it was able to be articulated as well. And in all honesty, although it didn't necessarily turn into a total sphere, and the way it dealt with the planet kibble was just to have the kind of hanging off the back. Is that much better than the War for Cybertron one? I don't know, really.
I mean...
Or is the War for Cybertron one much better? Because that's got loads of kibble hanging off the back of it as well.
Well, you could always just take it off. That's what I always used to do. You could just take the...
Yeah, you could just pop the sides off, couldn't you? And then, and it's fine.
Put the wings back on, and it was fine, yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess you can't do that with the War for Cybertron, right?
You can.
Well, you can. What you're not meant to. You actually have to get a screwdriver out and start thinking.
Yeah, someone's actually... There's a third party who's selling a... basically, it's a kind of armature...
yes.
That you can use to put all the kibble on, so that you have Unicron as a figure stood separate to Unicron as a planet, because you can basically put all the panels together and it's just an empty globe, but it still looks like you know what I mean. So you end up looking like you've got two.
I mean, that'd be two huge figures that you'd have to have space for.
Yeah. But I thought that Armada Unicron was a great figure. I really liked it. I really don't have any serious criticism of it. I thought it was fantastic. Had some nice light up gimmicks as well. The hand lit up and the eyes. Yeah, I liked it. It was good.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones that have set a bar for a figure, and they've just had so many variations on it. Like, that's another one that's been repainted and redone several times over, hasn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say in Japan they did a clear translucent green version of it.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And yeah, there have been a few other repaints over the years since as well. Like the translucent green one was an Armada toy, Micron Legends toy. But yeah, they did a more G1 accurate one at one point, and they've done a few different versions of it. And of course, I did mention that it got repainted and re-released in Energon as well.
Yeah.
I mean, talking of repaints and re-releases, there are a bunch of Beast Machines toys in the Armada line. Senior moment. Orion obviously means Beast Wars, not machines. Transmetal Air Razor, Cheetah, Rhinox, Pterosaur and Megatron, renamed Predacon to avoid confusing with the big guy, were redecoed and retooled for use in the Armada line. Transmetals.
Yes, yeah. Without their shiny vacuum.
Yeah, without that, and with added mini-con pegs, which apparently was because they didn't expect the line to be as popular as it was, and then they had to fill it out a bit more and add more toys to it. Off the back, and we'll probably talk about this in a bit, but off the back of Armada, they started the Universe line, and they were already kind of bringing back old molds through that. So it was a bit of a kind of crossover in a way. And I think a lot of people kind of use those Armada reissues to kind of represent...
Yeah.
There was kind of a separate continuity going on somewhere that people allowed people to use those toys as something else.
I remember the comics, the Transformers Energon comics, the Transmetal... I think it's Air Razor, Rhinox, Cheetor, and Pterosaur play like the four horsemen of the apocalypse for Unicron or something.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And
yeah,
they just come in, they just knock the crap out of Armada Prime, and he has to like reformat into Super Link body.
Yeah.
I remember reading those.
Yeah, you had the little comics that came with the toys, which was... I think they were drawn by Dreamwave, but they were quite separate to the Dreamwave comic itself, which is a different story altogether. In fact, I think it was written by Simon Furman.
Oh no, I'm not. I don't mean those comics. I mean, yes, those as well. But I mean, I'm talking about the actual Energon volumed issues. That's when they appeared and started doing stuff like that.
Actually, no, I think you're right. I think you are right. Yeah, sorry, I got the two confused. But yeah, that was Simon Furman did a lot of the Dreamwave Armada comic book and the Energon comic book until Dreamwave folded because Pat Lee doesn't pay people.
Yeah,
and then it was cancelled. But I didn't read much of it. I don't know about you. Did you read much of it? The comic?
I did. I liked it. It was very different from the show, but it was. I feel like you would have liked the comic more. It was definitely felt more like less kidsy than the show.
Yeah, I did read some of it, and it was okay. And there was even some kind of crossover with G1, where there was a storyline where they skipped dimensions or something and ended up. I think
sounds highly possible.
G1 Galvatron came through or something like that. It did happen, but. At the time, I was reading the Dreamwave G1 stuff, so I was less interested in the Dreamwave Armada stuff because I was just less interested in Armada in general. But yeah, as I understood it, they were more mature because they were aimed at a comic reading audience, and people who read comics are generally these days not kids.
It's true,
and haven't been for a long time, to be honest.
My optics!
Did you want to talk about what you sent me in WhatsApp?
Oh yeah, it was just one of the ones I could find a picture of. I knew there was like over the years, obviously looking at Transformers toys and Armada stuff. I've seen the prototypes of different characters before, what would have happened and whatnot, and finding the Hotshot one was kind of interesting. Of just like how, what was on the table of what could have happened in terms of toy wise. You know, how some things are a bit simpler, some things are...
I mean, I wouldn't say that the retail release toy looks that much better than the prototype. In fact, it possibly looks a bit worse.
I don't know. I mean, it's simplified, but I don't know.
It doesn't... I mean, this is something that I would say about Hotshot in particular, is he doesn't look like a Transformer.
How's
he looks like a child in a crash helmet with some shoulder pads on. He's got a round kind of globe-like head with a little face. If he hadn't got an Autobot symbol on his shoulder, I would think knockoff.
Really?
I would think it was one of those knockoffs you get in a Poundland or something.
I don't.
Well, not knockoffs. Like the cheap transforming toys that are not Transformers.
But I don't see how Hotshot's any different from any of the others, because they're not... I mean, he doesn't stand out in the terms of being so different from the others.
No, I don't think it's just the kind of curvy shape of him, and the fact that he's basically... You just stand the car up on its back, and there he is. Pretty much.
Yeah, he's a simple transformation, isn't it? I mean, it's
barely a transformation.
I think it's for where it's the movie, isn't it? There was a big change in Transformers Armada, Energon, and Cybertron in terms of their simple transformations, and then when the 2007 movie kicked around, and then transformations just got a whole lot more complicated, and that still was to fit the car aesthetic of making it real world. Obviously, a lot of the parts counts and whatever went into that, but it was like a nice period of like what we've talked about this before. Like you could pick up any toy from those lines and just do it in like five seconds. It was thought was needed. You didn't need instructions or anything. It was a nice point where you could just pick it up and
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like I said, I think it's great that they were kind of aimed at kids, but for me, they looked a bit too kidsy, and I think Hotshot is a very good example of a very kidsy-looking toy.
Yeah, I think it was because he was meant to. He was meant to be the...
Yeah, Scavenger's another one. Scavenger is just...
I didn't realise how static his toy was. I've never had it. I never...
Yeah, it's just... It looks like it belongs, like, in a Rescue Bots or a Fisher-Price line, you know? There's something very, very kind of a... There's no sharp corners, this won't take your kid's eye out kind of thing going on. It seems very kid-safe, which is fine, but it's just something that was a bit jarring when those first came out, that design change.
Well, since we're talking about the toys, what did you think of when they did that Universe one? When they redid Hotshot and they redid Starscream? Got new toys?
Well, I was going to talk about that towards the end, but we can talk about it now. What did I think? Well, I thought I don't like Hotshot, so I don't care. And I thought, I don't know, I thought Armada Starscream was okay. I didn't buy these toys. I had no interest in them.
You didn't buy either?
No, I didn't even think about buying them.
Okay. I mean, Hotshot, that's a given, but I thought maybe you would have gotten the Starscream.
I wasn't interested in Starscream in Armada at all, because I didn't watch the show.
Right.
Until just now. And I wouldn't buy one now either. Even though there's been some nice ones, I don't think I would. I'm not interested. I don't like... Spoiler alert, I don't like Armada very much. It's all right. It's fine, but if I were rating best Transformers shows or toy lines, Armada would come very much towards the bottom.
Yeah, I have an incredible bias against Armada because...
You mean? Not against.
Towards Armada, because it's my introduction to the whole thing.
Yeah,
but
I
yes,
get that.
I would agree. It's not the best toy line from any of the lines, or show-wise. It is very, very ropey.
Yeah. It is. But that's something we should talk about. It's not really held in high regard amongst the fandom, I would say.
I don't know.
At the time, I remember both the toy line and the cartoon being quite badly received by fans. Now, that doesn't matter if the kids watch it, which they did, and Hasbro sold a lot of toys, so it didn't matter. But I remember at the time it getting quite a kind of poor reception from Transformers fans. I mean, but that happens a lot. You know what Transformers fans are like.
Yeah, I was about to say.
But unlike, say, Beast Wars, it doesn't have that, apart from maybe from a few individuals like yourself, it doesn't have that kind of, like, that resurgence of love later. Beast Wars is held in much higher regard now than it was when it came out. I don't think Armada is.
Yeah, I think the difference between the two is that people were turned off from Beast Wars because of the whole organic animals and the departure from the aesthetic of G1, I guess. And they weren't even willing to give it a chance to see where the story was going. And by the time people did come back and then rewatch it, they realized that, oh, this is some of the best written stuff in Transformers in terms of the shows, you know?
Yeah.
But whereas Armada, I would hesitate, even watching it again now as an adult. I don't think there's anything there that really sparks as some of the best written stuff in Transformers lore. I mean, I love the show. I think it's a great, fun kids show you could put on for someone who's under the age of 15 or something, but it's not there. The characters aren't given the type of love in order for people to care about them in the same way. It's not there.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of driving at.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's been better Transformers kids shows since.
Credibly, yes, of course.
So why would you watch Armada? Unless you were one of the generation that grew up with it.
I think the only thing Armada has is its designs. I think some of the designs of those characters, well, obviously they still hold up because, you know, third party are making big moves to do some of the leaders from it. And I mean,
one particular third party company.
One company. I mean, I think that shows that there is some love for those aesthetic of those characters.
Oh, I agree. I think there is some love for the toy design, or at least the character design. Maybe not the toys specifically, because some of the toys were not great, but the character design definitely.
I think that's the only thing that Armada has.
And I think what Fans Hobby are doing is fantastic, because they seem to be both embracing the design, the character design, and being quite faithful to that from the TV show, but also embracing all the kind of gimmicky stuff that Armada and Energon and so on were all about. So that Megatron that came out a little while ago, it has loads of little Minicon gimmicks on it and stuff. It kind of still does all that stuff, and it has like a cannon that kind of like pumps backwards and forwards like when it's firing and so on. It has lights and sounds, and the same goes for the Optimus they made, and they're making an Energon Optimus now. Really kind of embracing that play style, the whole idea of it being a toy. Even though they're making a kind of masterpiece kind of scale collector's version of it, it's still very faithful to that original idea.
I mean, even the boxes they've done for them look great. Like this.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they're very, very, very reminiscent of the original boxes.
That was one thing rewatching this has made me very FOMO about those figures. Like, no, I didn't get it, and I'm not looking back at it now. I don't want to know how much is in the secondary market.
I think you can still get Megatron at the moment, brand new.
Yeah, I can get Megatron, but Prime.
Who cares about Prime? It's an ugly design.
You can't have one without the other. Didn't Hasbro teach you? You have to have both of them.
I will not be told what to do by Hasbro. I mean, I like the Megatron's design, but I have to say, Prime's smaller robot looks good. The combined mode is ugly as hell. Not just the one where he combines with his trailer, but the one where he's combined with Jetfire, the one where he's combined with Overload, or whatever you want to call it. Really not good. All that kind of gold, and there's so many colours on it. It doesn't have, there's no kind of, especially when you're combining with another robot that's got another colour scheme in itself. It's messy and incoherent.
I mean, I agree with your first part. I prefer the smaller Prime design. Overall, like, I really like the smokestacks are like weapons when he puts his hands together type of thing. I like how the Matrix is still in his chest type of transformation. I really enjoy the transformation of when he goes into super mode and his feet become hands as he flips over.
Yeah, but the final product. The
final
product.
I don't mind the design, but I can get why people wouldn't like it. I mean, I don't particularly like the head sculpt. It kind of reminds me of Omega Prime from RID, like how he had like the gold ears.
Yeah, a little bit. It reminds me of a Megazord, but then that's what a lot of stuff from Unicorn Trilogy reminds me of, especially Prime.
I don't know. I mean, I think what Fans Hobby has done, and when they've redesigned that super mode, it's probably the best that's looked to me. But then, obviously, that's not an official thing.
Yeah.
Every time it's been done since or before, I should mean, is it's very clunky, very can't move anything below the waist. He's got a cape on his back, which is all the runways.
But that's toy design. I'm just talking about the actual appearance of the character. Like, I just don't think it's a very attractive design in general. The little robot, fine, but the big guy, no. Talking about the thing where you're saying where he puts his guns together in the show, why does he put his fists together and shoot atoms out of his hands?
I don't know.
And why is that introduced out of nowhere?
I mean, I always used to do it with the toys.
and then later on, they're on Cybertron, they're shooting energy out of their hands.
Yeah, they forgot about guns towards the end.
Yeah. Like, we don't have guns anymore, we don't need those. We've got to shoot energy out of our hands.
I mean, that's Transformers, isn't it? I mean, they did that back in the day.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying it's unique. But it is noticeable.
I thought it was like some sort of callback to, I mean, the hand thing. I thought it was callback to Primal because of the whole wrist cannons. Like, I thought that was the reason they were there.
Yeah, but it's not coming out of his wrist cannons. It's coming out of his fists.
I mean, he does do the whole atom hand bomb thing, but he also does do the whole shooting out of his...
Yeah, he does do that as well. And also, in a way, just going back to introducing things out of nowhere. Like, he suddenly goes, oh, by the way, I've got this matrix in my chest. I don't know if you knew about that. Here it is.
Yeah.
I haven't really told anyone for the past 30 episodes, but here it is. And I'm just going to say, before I go on this mission, where I might die, Hot Rod, do you mind looking after this for me?
Yeah.
And then he does die. But I mean, that's we're going over old ground again there. But yeah, I mean, I do agree. I think the toy designs is where the toy and character designs are where the strength of Armada lies. Despite any problems I might have with the toys because they're not my thing, they were great kids' toys. And I think it was great that they just went in a completely different direction for a change. Well, not for a change. It was kind of what they did at the time. But I think the last example of this happening was probably animated. And ever since then, we've kind of stuck to doing the same thing over and over again. It was a huge departure from anything that had come previously, which I do appreciate. I love the Megatron design. I think the Starscream design is pretty good. Even Jetfire looks pretty cool. The toy didn't, but the design in the show was fairly cool looking. Blur, not so much. He has a lot of car hanging off his back, doesn't he? I like Blur as a toy. I don't really like him much in the show.
Yeah. I always liked that design of the car and whatnot, but it doesn't really translate as well for me anyway. I didn't.
Whenever you see him in the show from the back, it just looks like his car stood up on its back.
There was I did make a note of it. There's I think it's the episode after he's introduced. There's like a scene where he's leaning up against the wall, like crossing his arm, not ignoring everybody. And it's like, I thought he was leaning, but he's actually sitting on his car mode. Like he's just, he's resting on the car bit and legs across.
Well, yeah, because he's got these massive wings that come right down to the floor. It must be very difficult to get about and not kind of get through a doorway and so on. Like Tidal Wave is a quite cool looking toy, even though he was again, no articulation, but it was very cool looking. And I think that Fans Hobby are working on a Tidal Wave.
No, I think Tidal Wave was a great figure.
The toys sold a lot. And off the back of that, Hasbro put out more toys in the line, like the Beast Wars repaints, and then they launched the Universe line, and they were able to plow a lot more money into research and development for the rest of the Unicorn Trilogy, which is why you see that difference, I think, between the very simple kidsy designs of Armada and the more I don't know. I'd say refined designs of Energon and Cybertron.
But I think when you get into Energon in particular, that the designs, not of everybody, but some characters really pull more from their G1 designs, like, say, Prime and Megatron, for instance. It's very... I mean, it's not as... I won't say it's not as creative, but it's not as...
I would say Megatron, yes. Not so much Prime. Prime looks like a Megazord again.
In his super mode, but I mean, just regular...
And in his small mode, he looks like a fridge on legs.
Yeah, well, he looks like... he's got the classic chest for Prime, but he just hasn't got the waist or the thin legs and stuff.
He's a cube with arms and legs and a head on top. I suppose I do agree with you, but he's not... I wouldn't say he's super G1 reminiscent. Megatron is G1 Galvatron reminiscent.
Yeah.
Not Megatron. But yeah, they're definitely going for Galvatron more so. Yeah, there's definitely less of a departure in that sense. But they're not all the characters in... We'll talk about Energon another time, but I would say not all the characters are like that.
My optics!
Let's just get it out of the way then, Dave. Please... tell our listeners about the great games.
Well, I mean, it was only the one game. It came out on PlayStation 2 and I'm sure other consoles.
Mm-hmm.
I remember playing the demo at PlayStation Experience when PlayStation 2 launched. God, that's how old that is. It was... You could only play as Red Alert at the time. It was just so cool seeing these characters in a 3D form, like a visual game 3D model with the metals looking like metals, with the lasers looking like lasers. It was, at the time, for me as a child, it was a nice translation of those character designs. And then playing the game, it is probably one of the better Transformers games. It's not the best, but it's one of the better ones.
Sounds like faint praise to me.
No, it is. It's like not Transformers games are not really held in high regard. They're not.
Apart from the War for Cybertron games, they are highly regarded.
Yes, but even the War for Cybertron games are quite. The reason why they're so good is because they're quite limited. They're very short. They're very story driven. Whereas this game is quite expansive. You can go a lot and do a lot, and there's a lot left of your own devices because it's an old game where they didn't hold your hand all the time. So you just
I didn't even know there was one. I honestly didn't know there was a game.
It's practically the same as like we were talking about the very first few episodes of the show. You just go around and find minicons, and they power you up.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the blue, Unicorn turns up, and you have to go fight him in space.
Well, it sounds exactly like the show, then.
The only difference is there's no kids. All the Decepticons are bosses, and they bring back all the voice actors for the game as well. It's quite fun. It's a fun game to play. And the best level in the game is when you have to infiltrate a Decepticon warship, and you get through the game and you go around and beat it, and you get kicked out of it because it transforms into Tidal Wave, and you have to fight Tidal Wave like 10 times bigger than he is in the show. And it's just a fun level. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, things you learn. I've never really paid any attention to Transformers computer games, and I don't know if I ever will. I tend to see Transformers as a toy line with a TV show or a comic book attached, and the computer games just seem kind of something you can do if you like, but not something I'm bothered about.
I mean, I think the reason why that game probably caught a lot of people's attention in terms of it was just because of the timing of it, because of this. It was a game that was at the launch of PS2. So there was a lot of demos going out for it, and there was a lot of... I know people who don't really like Transformers or collect the toys or anything, but played that game and have fond memories of the game. So it's...
See, I don't know anyone who played that game, and I didn't even know it existed, so I'm not sure it had quite the impact you think
well,
it did.
I would put that up to the dramatic age difference of people that we would have been talking to at the time.
I know people who were very excited for the launch of the PS2, and what they were talking about was GTA.
Oh yeah,
and other things. No one was talking about, but I suppose maybe kids were, and if you were at the right age, maybe that was exciting.
My optics!
Right, well, I suppose we're going to wrap it up by kind of talking. We've already spoken about it a little bit already. But like the legacy, and I don't mean Transformers legacy, although that is definitely part of it. The legacy of the line, we are seeing homages to Armada starting to pop up. Like we spoke about the fan hobby stuff, and they seem to be going quite great guns on getting all the leader characters out. And then, obviously, as I mentioned, there's a tidal wave coming, so I wouldn't be surprised if they would do a Jetfire as well. And maybe an Overlord or
Overload.
There's an Overlord as well. Why do we have to have so many characters with similar names? That guy.
And the other guy, the prototype that I'm still waiting for.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. There are things from Armada that have continued. Like the idea of minicons has kind of continued here and there in various iterations. And you say, you had those Universe toy versions of Hotshot and Starscream. And there were the Mega SFC toys as well. But yeah, now in Transformers Legacy, there's going to be an Armada Starscream, we know for a fact. And there is that prototype of Armada Optimus Prime that we saw ages ago. And I wouldn't be surprised if that eventually rears its head somehow in Legacy or something like that.
I mean, I would hope so. But
you would have thought so. I think there will be smatterings of it here and there. Of Armada, that is. But, I mean, they've designed that toy, so I can't see them not putting it out.
I mean, I think it's... maybe they're just waiting for the actual anniversary to really kick it off. I hope so. I'm hopeful of it. I mean, people have mentioned the possibility of a Armada masterpiece, and I think it was you who told me about that, wasn't it? Like, it was an option at one point, but it was an option on a box for the votes or whatever. But
there was a fan vote for the next masterpiece. This was a long time ago, and the winner of the fan vote was Starsaber, and they made a masterpiece Starsaber. But the runner-up was Armada Optimus Prime, or Armada Convoy.
Cool.
This poll was held by Takara Tomy in 2013, almost 10 years ago, so it's probably not indicative at all of current thinking at the offices of Takara Tomy. The Masterpiece line is a fickle and unpredictable beast after all. However, as mentioned, Starsaber won with 31.2% of the vote, and as a result became MP24. Legends of Micron Convoy, aka Armada Prime, came in second with 24.3% of the vote, beating characters like Optimus Primal and Lyra Convoy, who have since received Masterpiece figures, and also well ahead of his Energon and Cybertron counterparts, which does show that, at the time, there was a considerable appetite for a Masterpiece version of the character. Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't buy it, but, not to say that other people... I don't know. I mean, they've done Beast Wars. They could do Armada Masterpieces. I mean, there was a time when I thought they were never going to do Masterpiece Beast Wars. So they could do Masterpiece Armada, maybe. I mean, the Masterpiece line is in a bit of flux at the moment, so it's very hard to say where it's going.
Well, there's definitely a market for it if people are buying the fans hobby. I mean, someone is willing to buy it.
The question is, how big is that market? Because fans hobby are able to make stuff for niche markets because they're a small third-party company and they only make a certain number of pieces and they sell them to those people who want them. Now, what Takara will need to see is that they can sell many more pieces than someone like Fans Hobby would do. They need to be sure that they're going to make their money back on it. It's a totally different proposition for an official company to do it than a third party.
Well, I mean, isn't it kind of matter of how well it did in Japan then? Because it's really their market. It's really their...
It only matters how well it did in Japan. Unless Hasbro and Takara work together on it like they did with the movie masterpieces. Hasbro don't really contribute towards the masterpiece line unless they plan to sell it in the US. So, yeah, it would really depend how popular the show was in Japan. And how many people they think would buy them. I wouldn't be surprised if they did one or two one day. I wouldn't expect much more than that, but then I could be wrong. I honestly didn't think we'd get as many Beast Wars masterpieces as we did. So, hey, it's possible. Anything's possible. Maybe we'll see some Armada masterpieces. Maybe we won't. But I reckon we'll definitely see a few more Legacy toys and a few more Fans Hobby toys. So, I suppose it's a good time to be an Armada fan.
Even in Transformers Red, I would be interested to see what they would do, but will they get that far? I don't know. Will Red survive that long? I don't know.
They could do. I mean, I've said my piece on what I think of Red. I think they're quite ugly toys. But, again, maybe just not aimed at me. But yeah, they haven't said they're going to do any, have they? They've said, so far we've seen G1, Beast Wars, and Prime. That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so far.
My optics!
Right, well, I think we've covered Transformers Armada. Well, probably not. I'm sure there's a bunch of things that the two of us will remember later and send messages back and forth, say we should have said that. But, hey, why don't you tell us what we've missed? You can find us on social media. You can connect with us on Facebook, where there's an AARGH My Optics page. I'm also on there as Orion Ghia. And on Twitter and Instagram, I am at Ghia Orion and Orion_Ghia, respectively. Virtual Dave, where can they come and wax lyrical about how wonderful the Armada toy line and cartoon were and how vitally important they were to their growing up? Where can they find you to do that?
You can always find me at Instagram at virtualdave26. Yes, please come and tell me how you enjoyed the Transformers video game back in the day, and prove to Orion that people do exist who played this game.
And how desperate you are for further Armada-related figures in the future.
I just want that Prime. They showed the prototype and they just put it on the shelf. And it's not been seen again.
Fingers crossed, eh? Right, well, don't forget that if you enjoyed the podcast, please let us know by liking, subscribing, sharing, reviewing, etc., blah, blah, blah. We really appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and please join us next time on
AARGH My Optics!